is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Peter Boulden, all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. He's been a practicing dentist for over 15 years and has built a very successful fee-for-service 3-location enterprise in Atlanta, Georgia, where he was raised his entire life. He is also the owner of a practice in North Georgia, which he acquired but does not do clinical dentistry there. It has seen tremendous growth by using the systems and marketing practices created from his flagship practice in Atlanta, even though it's an insurance-driven practice. Dr. Boulden is passionate about both clinical dentistry and the business of dentistry, creating systems and processes, developing marketing programs at work, and building an office culture that focuses on the patient's dental experience. He loves talking about goal setting and work-life balance and sharing these tips and strategies with other dentists. He also co-hosts the Bulletproof Dental Practice podcast with Dr. Craig Spodak. Together, they discuss those topics along with many others pertaining to work within the dental industry. He is married with 3 young kids. Dude, I love your podcast. That's why I called you. And also, what year did you get out of school? You got out in 2002?
2, yep.
So you've been out 15 years. And
Yep.
What do you think it's like out? What is it like in Georgia for kids coming out of school these days? Your buddy, your partner on the podcast, Craig Spodak, he's in Florida?
Yep.
Where is he in Florida?
He's in Delray Beach, which is, I guess in the South Florida area. So
South
definitely
Florida.
a competitive space.
So what's it like in Atlanta, Georgia now? What would you be telling these millennials who are getting ready to graduate next year? Right now they're working as an associate somewhere. What would it be like starting a dental office today in Atlanta?
I think it'd be rough. I'm just kidding. Honestly, Howard, I thought you might touch on this because I've thought about this a lot. And I honestly would have told a lot of grads that if I were them, I would look at a more rural setting if it felt like it'd be something they could do. And the reason I say that is because I think there's a lot more opportunity in that kind of setting. I think the quality of life is a little bit better. I think you can make a little bit better. I think you can make more of an impact. I mean, so, from what I've seen, there's just a lot of saturation, especially in big cities, because unfortunately, everyone wants to go there.
Yeah, and it seems like the only people that go rural are the people that come from rural. The deans of the dental schools to figure that out. They first thought, well, if you double the supply of dentists, it'll spread them all out across the rural. And that's just clearly not true. If you're born in Hollywood, you're not going to go to Bakersfield. And now they're realizing if you want some kid to go to a town of 5,000, you got to get a kid from that town of 5,000 to go to dental school. And a lot of the dentists, everybody always whines. You're either an optimist or a pessimist. And I got dentist friends who are mad at their dad because they're alcoholics because their dad was an alcoholic. I got other dentist friends that watched their dad be an alcoholic and decided at age 12 to never have a drink of firewater their entire life and have still never had a drink. And I know dentists in small towns that complain, well, you can't get a hygienist to come to a town of 3,000. I know another dentist that went to the high school and had an essay contest, why I want to be a dental hygienist. And if you won the essay contest, he'd pay your way to go to hygiene school. 2 girls sent in an essay, so he sent them both to hygiene school. And bada boom, bada boom.
Wow.
He's got 2 hygienists. I think it's a town of like 3,000. So, I mean, at some point, you got to make your own luck,
I mean, it's a little crazy to me. You mentioned that I had a practice in North Georgia. I don't work at that. I bought that as just an acquisition investment. But literally, they've been telling me I can't find another dentist, and we're at a capacity issue. And they're like, we can't see a new patient till September. 7 months from now. Which to me, as a marketing kind of, that's kind of how I built my business. I'm like, what do you mean we can't see a new patient? So it really bothers me at the core. So that being said, I just, I could find a dentist for, in town in Atlanta super quick, but it's just crazy because I don't know. I just find it bewildering to me a little bit.
Now, how far away was this town from Atlanta?
It's probably 2 hours from Atlanta. So it's right at the North Carolina border. It's in a town called Blairsville. And it's awesome quality of life, awesome people, awesome patients, but whatever, to each his own.
Yeah. So your first advice would be rural. Well, but on your podcast, you talk about so many systems. What do you want to? What systems do you think people listening to you today should be thinking about?
A lot of the systems, there's obviously clinical systems that you need to have on point. And, I'm big on kind of creating manuals and videos and education on that because, so I'm going to put it into two silos, Howard, kind of some business systems, KPIs and all that stuff I can go into, and then clinical systems because they have to work in tandem. And, so I'm a big proponent of really documenting the process so that people can't go rogue and figure out their own process. I want to be the author of that process, or at least have my team be. So we have a document that kind of goes around that we are continually editing, almost like a Wikipedia, right? Like for our manual.
Can my homies see that manual?
I don't know, man.
Is that proprietary?
That's been a 15-year curation of stuff. I feel like that'd be getting the secret sauce away if there was one. I don't know. Let me think about that.
But for 15 years you've had like a Word document going of all your protocols and manuals.
Not for 15 years. It's been as of I would say it's been within the last 3 that we've had that going, but it's been the culmination, obviously, of 15. So some things have been just put into there. And then the systems that I would really recommend is from a business standpoint, because, I know the old adage is we don't get told a lot of business stuff in dental school, which is true. And I think a lot of dentists get very unhappy with the fact that once they get out of school, they realize to run their own practice, the dentistry is only about half of their job. So become versed and become skilled at kind of knowing what to do with running literally a business. It's not just clinical.
Yeah, and you look at these dentists, and basically, they say they didn't learn any business in dental school. Well, they also didn't learn their politics, their religion, their diet, their food. And the biggest giveaway I see is if your mom and dad own their own business, you come out of the gates running. And if your mom and dad were employees and no one talked business, then you go to dinner at anybody's house where mom and dad own the transmission shop or the restaurant or the farm. They're always talking about bills, overhead, cash flow. But if your mom and dad just clock in and out, then there's no discussion of it at home.
One other piece of advice that I, for new grads, and I don't know if I know you asked about systems, but, there's something kind of intangible to talk about as well. And so it's kind of like the self-awareness and really, what am I trying to say? So I just did a podcast with Chris Ramsey. I don't know if you know him. So Ramsey and Ritter, they're in South Florida. And he speaks about one of the most important subjects as I am, which is kind of a body language and empathy and kind of having awesome, chairside manner and stuff like that, which I think has been missed a little bit. And I think that's the delineating factor. If you can have those amazing qualities, that's what makes you an amazing enrolling dentist.
I couldn't agree more. It's the whole bag of chips. A lot of people ask me, well, why didn't you start a chain of dental offices? And I thought, well, I didn't think the core competency was the location, the marketing, the advertising. I thought the only core competency was the dentist. And if they had a chairside manner, they always made you feel good. They always made you secrete oxytocin, dopamine, serotonin, and you just liked that guy, you crushed it. But if you put them in fight or flight and you talk down, you blamed them, they didn't, and you don't have that chairside manner, they all run. And my God, and there's not one person in America that knows what any of that alphabet soup shit is behind your name. You'll get a real estate agent and there's like 7 different letters behind their name. No one knows what FAGD, MAGD, DDS. They don't even know what a DMD is.
Right. Exactly.
And by the way, the DDS is the only real dentist. You know how you can tell?
How?
If I put your name in, Peter Boulden, DMD, in a Microsoft Outlook today, it makes DMD your last name and then Peter Boulden. But if I put Howard Farran DDS, it'll put Farran last, comma, Howard. So it knows DDS is a recognized license.
According to Microsoft.
And they know that DMD is just, it's just
a joke,
it's
right?
just a pretend.
We need to call Kentucky and tell them to stop giving those out.
Well, actually, all of the last 7 new dental schools all went with DMD.
It's funny. People always ask me, like, what's the difference? I'm like, I don't know.
Well, I
have no idea.
There shouldn't confuse the consumer. I think that, because there are differences with some different last degrees. But if there's not a difference between the degree, then you shouldn't confuse the market. I
I tell people mine was just an online degree. I got mine just online.
From University of Phoenix Online. But yeah, I mean, but is that chairside manner, that warm and fuzzy person, the lady that just knows how to explain? I mean, Einstein always said, if you can't, you got to explain it simple. And, if you can't explain it simple, you don't understand what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And do you think that can be taught, or is that innate? I mean, is that personality already there?
Yeah, so I think some of it's learned, and I think some of it's just, the gift that God gave you, or whatever it is. But I also think, unfortunately, that our society, with all the technology, people aren't getting as much training real world as like you or I had, meaning the cell phones. And that's how we do a lot of our interactions now, is just on social media and really not out in the real world sometimes. So I think that's one of the detriments of technology. But back to your question, I do think it can be learned, because I've seen it done. By reading books. Like Robert Cialdini's book is an awesome one to kind of start with.
Influence?
Talking about.
What's the name of his book?
Robert Cialdini. He's
Influence?
got two. One's called Persuasion.
Yeah.
And the other one's called, I think, Influence.
Yeah, he was my teacher at ASU in MBA school.
No way.
Yeah, I went to Arizona State University, and that's where he still is. And I live in Ahwatukee, so does he.
So I'm a huge fan of his.
And he won't come on my damn podcast because he's too damn busy. He's like, dude, I'm too busy. I'm way too busy. I don't have an hour.
I bet he is. I bet he is, man. Yeah.
I thought the most important thing in that book was, when we were little and they had Charlie Brown, whenever the adults were talking, they always were wah, 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 wah. And then I had 4 babies, and I was talking to my Eric so many times. My dad would say, Howard, he doesn't understand 90% of the words you're saying. He's 1. He's got like a 10-word vocabulary. And I'm thinking, wah, wah, wah. And he figured out that the word because was the most influential, persuasive word, because when you're a baby sapien, you're here, wah, 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 because, and then you're going to do something else. And it's already hardwired in their brain that the minute you say because, they go from, okay, I don't know or care or believe all the reasons, but what do I got to do? And he has so much research that said that, if you say, come in and buy this because, and when you're talking to people because of that, I mean, it was a very powerful book.
Yeah, they actually even give an example, and I don't know if this was his example, but have you ever heard the one where they did an experiment with a grocery line and someone was like, hey, can I cut in front of you? And they tested the response, right? And people were like, no, you can't. And then they tested it with, hey, can I cut in front of you because I'm in a hurry? And the response was a little bit better. But when they said, can I cut in you because I'm late? The response was like 90% yes, right? But so I think it's to your point. I don't know if the delineating factor was the because, but I think it falls in that kind of vertical of what you're talking about for sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, you just see so many dental offices where they have every 3 patients that come in with a cavity, they drill, fill, and bill 1. And then and that's 80% of the practices. Then 20%, 3 people come in with a cavity and they drill, fill, and bill 2. And what's consistent is that nobody gets 1 out of 3 because you're dealing with crazy people. How many hypoglycemics are pre-diabetic who are even started taking insulin or still drinking a 12-pack every night? You know what I mean? They're people. I mean, how many patients have you come in with an oxygen tube and they're smoking outside your office before they come in? I mean, they're people. You got to love them, but they're freaking crazy. And so 1 out of 3 isn't going to do anything they're told. But the real difference is that, are you going to do 1 out of 3 cavities or 2 out of 3 cavities? And that's going to come from chairside manner, saying the right words.
The law of thirds, like a third always say yes, a third are decided, and a third always say no. So really, your enrollment should be at least 66%.
Yeah, if you can learn that chairside, and then the other thing with the office is that chairside manner, well, the most important one's who's answering the phone. And then they come in, it might be the assistant to take them back to the room. And then there's the hygienist for an hour. So there's like 4 relationship touch points that it just takes one to go south and she's gone.
Yep. 100%. I totally agree with that.
So how do you coach your team on your new patient experience, your customer service? I know you're really big into the customer.
Well, I'm into the experience,
The customer
honestly.
experience.
Yeah, because I think that's where, there's a huge talk, and I'm sure you hear it way more than I do, even about the fear of corporate takeover and this and that, with dentists and stuff like that. And I say that really, I think that the single solo dentist has the advantage. Number one, they have the advantage of being the relationship and the experience. Because I can beat the pants off of a corporate experience all day long. Right. And so I'm big on creating that experience, especially with millennials as they're coming up, because they're big on that. They're big on the experience and the quality and the value, not so much the price point, which is what some generations has been. I think my generation, I guess, was Gen X. It was more on, well, what's the cheapest price? Because we were a product of our parents. But I think the upcoming generations are going to value experience and the ecosystem and the process much more than other generations have.
Well, I think it's funny how everybody thinks corporate will be the bad guy, and corporate is number one. They're the only ones providing all the jobs to the 6,000 graduates each year. So the graduates are thanking God for corporate. Number two, the only practice you can sell is right at around a sweet spot of about 750,000 plus or minus 100. So if you build your practice to 2 or 3 or 4 million, only Heartland can write you a check today for that. So they provide liquidity. And what's always best, but no one ever wants on advice, is competition. Every Fortune 500 company has been begging Washington to keep out Japanese cars, Germans cars. Nobody wants competition. And what corporate's bringing is competition on hours, availability, better websites, better hours, better convenience. So competition always makes the whole industry more healthy.
Totally agree. And I'm not insinuating by any means that corporate's not good, bad, or indifferent. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that I hear of people being scared a lot, and sometimes it's been like, oh well, I'm going to give up. I'm just going to sell because they're going to win. I'm like, well, I don't know if should be your attitude.
I mean, my God, what I would fear is if you were across the street, not 3 corporate dental chains.
Exactly.
And a lot of these demons that everybody throws at the corporate dental chains is industry-wide. Like they always say, well, corporate can't keep their associates. Well, free enterprise doesn't keep their associates. Go ask all the associates how they like their associate job. Right. I mean, you can measure it. You can really sum up the whole damn thing in 2 things: macro and micro. Macro, nobody ever stops needing new patients. So most dentists, by the time they get to 5,000 charge, 4,000 are not scheduled for anything on the computer, which is my definition of active. So you go to some man in a small town of Georgia, only 5,000 people, and he practices from 25 to 65, 40 years. And you go meet him, say, hey, buddy, what do you need? He's like, well, I need some new patients. Dude, you've been here for 4 decades. There's only 5,000 people. You've pissed everyone off at least 3 times.
Yeah, you're done.
I mean, so nobody keeps their customers for life. Every single dental office I've ever seen still needs new patient flow for cash flow. So nobody kept their patients. I think corporate keeps them less than that, but that could be a bias. It means no. And then why associates don't work, I'll just summarize it to burrs. I mean, you go into any group practice, it doesn't matter if it's Aspen or just one group practice of 4 guys. The assistants are like, okay, we have 4 dentists, and every one of them needs 7 different burrs to do a filling, and then they need 8 different burrs on top of that to do a crown, and then you sit down, and half the time we're saying, well, I can't do it with this burr. Go find me that burr. And they're just like, hey, could you guys just all agree on a round burr block with 5 burrs for all fillings? And they say, you're out of your mind. That's impossible. I mean, what are you going to say next? That you just saw a pig fly by the window? So if you can't get 3 dentists in one building to agree on 5 burrs for a filling, how the hell are you going to run corporate dentistry? You can't get dentists to agree on anything.
Right. And especially, and I don't know if having equity or not having equity is a staying factor these days, but like I know that, just the churn is what happens in corporate, but obviously you just alluded to the fact that it happens in private practice too. Failed associateships just as readily. So,
you just summed it up. It is the equity. The lawyers started group practice 50 years before we did, in all these big international law firms, and they realized that all their lawyers quit unless you made them partner. And so you come in there and you work your ass off for 5 years, you bring in new business, you hustle, you're humble, you listen, you get the corporate culture, and we decide, okay, you're one of us, you're humble, you play nice in a sandbox, you bring new business, you run this thing like an owner, so we're going to make you an owner, and it's called a partner. And that's how they do it in those big consulting firms. And then you go work at corporate, and they say, oh, you're an employee today, and if you stay with me for 40 years, you'll still be an employee.
Right.
And so that then give the
that
human
sounded good to no one ever, right? Like
Yeah.
that's yeah.
So the business, obviously, the business model, the best business model for corporate, I don't think has been discovered yet. It's still
No.
evolving.
No, I don't. I think we're going to learn lessons from companies like Amazon and Uber, and I think there is going to be an evolution in dentistry that's going to follow suit pretty quickly. But you know, our economy, our society has changed, and dentistry has not. And dentistry is the same cottage industry typically that it was since inception.
Yeah. So how do you let's start with the biggest problem. If I lined up 100 dentists and said, what is your biggest problem? What keeps you up at night the most? It's always a people issue. It's either their employees or their patients. It's usually their employees. My hygienist hates my assistant. I told the whole staff we're going to go bankrupt next week, and after the meeting, 3 of them asked me for a raise. What is your HR skills? What advice could you give people, because they're coming out of an associateship job, they want to start a de novo practice, and they're going to have to start hiring some employees. They're going to find out that if they thought their family around the Thanksgiving table was crazy and insane, wait till they have a bunch of employees. Would you say employees are crazier than family, or would you say they're equally insane?
I mean, I'm not going to say I love I have a big team, I have, over 35 people, and I don't have bad, I kind of dig my team. I mean, and maybe that's the culture that's been created, or the culture I created, and it just kind of keeps out, any kind of bad behavior. But it really is a team effort, and I just don't have that drama. I don't even deal with much HR, believe it or not.
Because the fish rots from the head down. So just like you have a chairside manner and you love talking to people about what they need, you love your team, it's your culture. When there's dysfunction and chaos and whatever, there's only, Harry S. Truman had a sign on his desk, the buck stops here. It's your team. So that's just your skill.
And organically, Howard, like those people who cause a lot of problems end up finding their happiness somewhere else. And it wasn't because I did, but the team kind of will alienate them, and we'll find that, not on purpose or mean, but you know what I mean? Like they're just like, hey, because I tell my people, do you remember the Under Armour commercial where a long time ago it was like, who will protect this house? It was all the athletes. No one ever remembers this. I did a lecture for Mark Costas, and I said this on a stage, and everyone kind of looked at me like, what? Anyway, there was this commercial, and it was, I don't know who the athlete was, but he was yelling at everybody, and they were training. It was like, who will protect this house? And this is our house. No one can get into this stadium. Protect this house. So I kind of use the same mentality with my team. Like, you guys you love where you work right now, right? Protect this house. Protect this house, because someone can come in and ruin this environment. They can ruin your life that you spend. They can ruin half of your life because you spend about that much here. So protect this house, protect this culture, treat it right.
Yeah, that is nice. And and once you get the culture going, if you run it for 15, 20, 30, 40 years, sometimes you'll see a new person come in and start to create a cancer of dysfunction. And that's the other thing the greatest leaders do, is when they spot that this person, and a lot of times you're right, there's nothing wrong with them. You see it in the NFL all the time where a player is horrible on this team. He gets traded, and then he's an all-star.
He's amazing.
Yeah, but you got to be able to spot it. And so many dentists, I always see it with my own eyes, and I always hear about it from staff where, when the root canal is done, he goes in his office and shuts the door. And there could even be, a yelling, screaming match in sterilization, and he walks right past. He's not involved. He doesn't want to. He just wants to bury his head in the sand. So he doesn't have the natural curiosity or involvement. I was talking about the NBA. during the whole NBA and NFL game, where's the coach? Walking with the whole front line up and down the field. Where's the dentist? Oh, in his office with the door shut.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a great analogy. Honestly, you're right. I mean, I think that's engagement on a whole lot of levels, and that makes the difference. And, yeah, I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense.
So you talk about goal setting. Do you believe the old cliche that if your goals are written down, you're more successful than the guy with the goals not written down?
100%, 1,000%. I do. And not because I like a secret and put it out in the universe kind of BS, but simply because I think it keeps your mind. I think putting your subconscious to work is the most powerful thing that we humans have. And I think by
putting your
reviewing
conscious
it daily,
to work,
our subconscious,
to work.
Yeah. So I review them sometimes at night to actually utilize my sleep, and so I can wake up with sometimes solutions, and sometimes I do. But every morning I wake up with a sheet of kind of what I want to accomplish. Either that's the year, and I ask myself literally, Howard, what am I going to do today that's going to move the needle forward just a little bit. But I totally believe in writing them down. Totally. It keeps you accountable to yourself as well.
Yeah, they always say, lying to other people is what monkeys do to survive. You know what I mean? But when you start lying to yourself, that's the real problem.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I also, what I like about the goals is it's communication, and I love it when people even post their goals on Dental Town, because they're trying to put out there that, hey, I'm holding myself to that, and they want to create their own environment.
I like that too, and also creating that transparency. People always want to align themselves in even the help of that. Like I let my team know some of my goals because I know that they can foster that acceleration faster, and vice versa.
So what creating systems and processes, just go through some of the bulletproof technology, like what practice management software did you go with? EagleSoft, and their stock just got downgraded today. Did you see that in the newspaper?
No, I don't pay attention. I don't even look at the stock market. Puts me in a bad mood, and my day used to live and die by the stock market, so I pretty much am not in the stock market.
And and that's why the podcasts on Dental Town have been exploding, and I'm so grateful that you put yours up there, because that's what all these millennials tell me. They say, I just can't commute an hour to work listening to all this negative news. I mean, if I hear Trump and Russia and Putin and North Korea and ISIS one more time, I'm going to drive off the road. I mean, you listen to that stuff an hour a day, you're in such a bad mood. How can you go in there with a sparkle in your eye and compliment your assistant and get that grandma to do it? I mean, how could you put all that negative thought in your head? And when they drive to work and they listen to you for an hour, they come to work with more bulletproof dental practice ideas. I mean, it's just the power of positive thinking.
Yeah, I don't listen to that anymore either, just because you're right. Like, you can't help even the most positive people if you get the message of doom and gloom all day long from news, or the sky is falling. Like, you can't help but to be a little negative. And I don't really get much value from that. And I'm a big value proponent of, like, I need to make sure I'm getting value with my time. And so I'm a big proponent of podcasts too, even outside of dentistry. I'd say half of them I listen to, maybe even more, outside of the field of dentistry.
What are you listening to?
So I'm a big fan of a guy named Peter Diamandis, and he talks about actually the contrary to what you were just talking about. He wrote a book called Abundance.
Oh, yeah.
Have you ever heard of it?
Yeah.
Man, that's like the greatest book ever. And in terms of, like, you hear about what's on the news, and you think this is the worst time in history that we lived in. It's actually the best time on a whole lot of levels: education, health, politics, war, like all these things. And he kind of shows you, he dispels that with data. And he's kind of just a moonshot thinker. So I kind of like just listening to people like that, because it gives me my own little micro moonshots in my lane of dentistry.
Peter Diamandis.
Yep.
Well,
so that's one.
The other thing about the news is, I always tell my four boys, don't spend any time focusing on something that you can't change anything. I mean, if I thought about the Middle East crisis or whatever, 100 hours a day, for 1,000 years, I would have 0.00 impact on it.
Yep.
But if I could sit there but I can change my house, my boys, my office, my relationships. So if you have no effect on it, you're wasting your time. And if you're wasting your time, like I waste a lot of my time in football season. I know it. I know the NFL is a complete idiotic deal. And anybody who makes fun of reality TV shows, it's like, okay, well, reality TV is more intelligent because when you watch reality TV, you know why Shawanda is mad at Amy. I have no idea.
Yeah, but it's a waste of time. I can tell you
I have
because
no idea.
My wife's been on several, and I've had to partake in a couple. And she had a couple series, and
your wife was on a reality TV show.
Yeah, two.
No
two
way.
Series. Two.
What were they called?
So one was on Lifetime called Pretty Wicked Moms.
You can't make this up.
You can't make it up. And they were trying to make Wicked like Wicked cool, but it ended up being like people construed it a different way. And then she was on one on a network called FYI, and it was named after her clothing store, and her store was called Swank. And so it was called Get Swank. But anyway, I had to do appearances all the time on it, and they would literally just tell you what to say. So I'm reinforcing the fact that reality is definitely not reality.
Yeah. But the point being, I was going to say is like I have some friends, and it's like, I just don't want you to talk about politics because when you talk about politics, your breathing goes up and your arms are flinging and you get mad, you get upset. But when you talk about football, you don't act that way. I just don't want you to talk about anything that works you up in a frenzy.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. Football people can be just as fanatic, especially in the South.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, the craziest sports fans on earth are not in America. It's the soccer crowd.
Soccer.
Oh my God, that's completely at a whole different. It makes the NFL crowd look like they're on
Brazilian soccer game.
Yeah, sometimes the ref dies. I'm serious.
Sometimes some of the fans on the opposing team die. Like there's literally you've seen all the stuff.
So Peter Diamandis in abundance, and that's huge in dentistry too, because when you're a little kid and you go to that small town and there's 20 dentists in there, half of them are going to think in fear and scarcity, and they're not going to, they wish you didn't come there, and they don't want to know you or anything. The other half are like, come on, let me buy you a beer, let's talk, and you'll see each other's patients, you'll go to CE course together, and those guys think, the problem isn't another dentist in this town, it's this, that everybody bought a new $800 iPhone. This country spends more on hair than teeth. So I would just look for a dentist. Same thing with specialists. Like some orthodontists, if you do an Invisalign case, they won't even look at you at the study club. Well, screw that guy. Go find the orthodontist that says, hey, if you ever have a problem, come by my office.
Exactly. Honestly, so you'll appreciate this. So Peter Diamandis, going back to him, and then I'll tell you about one other guy that I really love his podcast, listen to it daily. But so Peter Diamandis and a guy named Craig Venter started this thing called Human Longevity Corporation. It's out in La Jolla. And because I'm such a fan of him and his acceleration of extending quality of human life to about 120 is what they're trying to do. I went out and had my genome mapped and like full body MRI, and just to get a ton of data on my body. So that just shows you what a raving fan of his I am. I kind of just followed like a disciple into getting
That's Peter Diamandis does that?
Well, he started the company with a guy named Craig Venter, who is like a famous geneticist who had a couple huge, it's $1 billion company pretty much now. But anyway, that was a cool experience.
And what is, did you post that on Dental Town?
No.
God, I wish you did. Did they go through your DNA and find out that you might be susceptible to a certain disease?
Yes. It wasn't just like 23andMe. Like I literally had every base pair mapped.
And what did that cost?
$22,000.
$22,000. And what percent Neanderthal were you?
Well, that's a 23andMe. I don't know. I was like,
I was 4.5% Neanderthal.
In my family, I was the least Neanderthal, even my mom and dad. So that was the joke of the family. But so anyway, I did that, Howard. I need to go because you asked me the price. Now I need to back it up with why I did that, because that people are going to be like, what the hell? So I thought I had some health issues a long time ago. They thought I had Crohn's and some speculation. So I always had this preconceived notion that something was wrong with me. And so for me, I kind of had to get clarity on my life cycle, especially having three kids and stuff like that. So, and because I, come from the background of science, as a biochem major, I really just wanted to get data in my hands, and I wasn't getting it through just blood work. So that's why I kind of went into next level aggregation of putting biohacking my own health. And so that's the disclaimer, because I know people are like, what the hell, just spending money like that. But it actually did serve tremendous value for me. And there's some other things that came from it, but I won't bore you. The other podcast, to leap subjects, is a guy named Gary Vaynerchuk.
The wine house guy.
Yeah, the wine library.
Yeah, the wine library. Yeah, I love that guy.
So he has it's the Ask Gary V show, and I'm just a huge fan of him. And his just no nonsense, no bullshit, just practical business advice.
And how long is his podcast?
It's quick. I mean, it goes for how long are the actual podcasts?
Yeah.
Or how long has he been doing it?
How long are the podcasts?
I mean, they're anywhere from an hour and a half, because sometimes he'll record his keynote to someone, or they're 12-minute rants.
Yeah.
But it's pretty awesome. I dig his authenticity. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. It's they always say you're a summary of your 5 best people. So if you let these negative people in your life just spew all this toxic crap, that takes you down. And it's so cool that with a smartphone and a TV and a podcast, you can let Gary V into your head every day. Yep.
I agree. So, those are a couple of my favorites, and I didn't mean to spend that long on that, but yeah.
So it's back to your genome though. There was another big breakthrough yesterday. Did you read that? They knew that they speculated that when Homo sapien left Africa 78,000 years ago, that there's probably at least 5 different groups of sapiens walking around, just like there's different groups of tigers right now. There's lions and tigers and cheetahs and pumas, and they know that Neanderthal was big, and that we bred with them, and that they're probably 4% of our genes and all that stuff. There was another group that they didn't know hardly anything about, and they only had a finger bone and 2 molars, but they found a baby tooth, and they were able to get the DNA out of there. And it was a 200,000-year-old baby tooth. Did you see that story?
No.
Because the hardest substance in the body is the enamel, and if you're ever going to hide DNA somewhere, it'd be in a baby tooth. And talk about the most undifferentiated DNA. I mean, 200,000-year-old baby tooth reveals clues about mysterious human lineage, and it's his Denisova cave in Siberia. So I keep reading. I really have loved reading and following the anthropologists, because they have pointed out the most obvious thing, which is the entire orthodontic profession. None of these malocclusions are found in skeletons going back 300 years. So the question isn't, is your daughter class 1, class 2, class 3? Does she need 4 bicuspid extraction? It's like, how come from 300 years ago to 200,000 years ago, there's no malocclusions? And the anthropologists, they're not dentists, and they're already saying, well, you used to throw your daughter a mastodon bone, and she's sitting there trying to chew cartilage off of a bone. Now you're feeding her applesauce out of a jar. There's no forces on her face. Back in the day, you had to nurse for a couple of years. Today, when you start nursing your baby, the minute the baby farts or squirms or cries, you say, screw this, switch to a bottle with a sippy cup. So they're saying that these babies have had no force, and your baby should be expending energy and sweating when she's eating. She should be fighting for that little, scraping that marrow out of a bone.
On that mastodon bone.
Yeah, and since we've applied no forces to their face, they're all messed up. And I think that's going to be a big marketing. If I was a millennial, I'd be orthodontist. I'd be having all these deals in your office, in your waiting room. Come to my presentation, learn so that your baby won't need ortho. forget about having to give her ortho. Let's get in an anthropologist from the school, and let's talk about, how to prevent, nurse for a whole year, give her something she actually has to chew on instead of just, puree blended crap in a jar,
I think I'm guilty of giving my kids puree crap in a jar.
Yeah, but it really, I mean, even Carl Misch used to always talk about that. Stress is just force over area, and you need something to spread that face. You need something to spread that maxilla and all that kind of stuff. So
That's pretty cool.
you also talk about a work-life balance. Now, your wife owns her own business,
She does.
and you have 3 kids.
We do.
So how do you do a work-life balance, and why is that important to you? Because in our generation, I mean, seriously, when I grew up, if I wanted to see my dad, I had to go to Sonic Drive-In. And he was there when I woke up, and he was there when I went to bed, and he was there 7 days a week. And that was just all my friends. Like, if I went over to my friend's house, I mean, his dad wasn't sitting on the couch. He was out in the barn trying to fix a combine. I mean, back in the day, real men worked all day, every day.
My wife's favorite restaurant is Sonic. She's from rural Mississippi. So I'm going to tell her that we spoke, because every time we're driving somewhere, she's like, is there a Sonic nearby? I'm like, no, not even close.
Oh my God. That's where I cut my teeth, man. My dad, that was so damn cool. He had 5 Sonics in Wichita.
Wow.
And 4 other ones out, Abilene, Kansas, Kearney, Nebraska, Childress, Texas, Louisville, Kentucky. And I just had no idea how much business I was learning until I got out of dental school and realized that there's no difference between the business of burgers and onion rings and the business of fillings and crowns. I mean, business is
business.
I know, it's people, employees, for building relationships with people, customers. It's all the same. It's that we're all in the people business.
Yes, absolutely, 100%. So you were asking like about how do I have work-life balance?
Yeah.
That's how I sidetracked you with the Sonic there comment. So Howard, in 2015, I had a really, I know your podcast is called Uncensored, but I don't cuss, right?
No, you can cuss all day long, man. This is HBO. This is Dentistry Uncensored.
Didn't know if it was like the G-rated.
No,
so I had
no.
I tell people I had the shittiest year of my life was 2015. I got embezzled from $500,000.
Wow.
I had a partnership breakup of my that I had to take my life savings and pay off, and business was just crazy and disrupted because of that scenario. And my son was born 6 weeks premature, and all this kind of happened within a 6-month period at the end of 2015. And I was under the most clinical strain, meaning I was having the biggest clinical year of my life, which would sound like a good thing if I wasn't just being pulled in 100 different directions. So literally I tell people, and so I going back to corporate, I was literally about to sell the entire practice at the end of the year because I just couldn't take it anymore. I was burnt out. I was done. I had a dislike for dentistry as a whole because of all that was going on. So I kept telling myself, like, I'm going to do one more day. And I would tell myself that every day because I really literally wanted to quit every day. And so I told myself, look, every day, just one step in front of the other. I'd sit on the end of the bed and be like, just do today and let's talk about it at the end of the day. And I'd have these conversations with myself. I said, all right, let's get to the end of the year. So this was around Thanksgiving. I said, look, I can get to the end of the year. And once that break hits, I'm going to reverse engineer my life because my life is controlling me and kicking my ass right now. So I'm going to take 2016 and kick its ass and totally reverse engineer it. So I totally modified my schedule and my priorities and all these things to gain control. And luckily I had that, that couple week period to kind of reverse engineer and totally be systematic about the deployment of it.
Wow. Well, let's go through the first. What lessons were learned on embezzlement? What did you learn after getting embezzled that would prevent that second time?
Oh man. Don't ever trust someone, no matter how much your gut tells you to trust them. And I think.
Was it an office manager? Was it? It was an office manager.
Office manager. Mm-hmm. Yep. And I always prided myself on being like, oh, I know my business and I know this and that, and Unfortunately, I was a little distracted because my partner and I were fighting at the time. And so, our eyes were shifted away from balances and checks and all these things. So there was an opportunity for fraud that presented itself just unfortunately organically. So the lessons I've learned is to have multiple accountability, multiple checks and balances, not one person responsible for a certain role. So my office manager now is involved in it, yes, but I also have a bookkeeper that has to check her work. And then my CPA has to check all that work. And then I check the reconciliation of stuff, just to make sure everything lines up. And because I trusted someone emphatically, I paid the price.
And were you able to get criminal, or were you able to prosecute?
It's actually ongoing right now. I'm kind of in line. Apparently there's a lot of white collar crime in Atlanta.
And you know what? Back in the day when I got out 30 years ago, it was all paper, pegboard systems. Everything was a check. Everything's a hard copy. Everybody in embezzlement says that now that it's all gone digital, there's literally 100 more ways to embezzle. Hell, I know people that can tell you 12 different ways you can embezzle from your boss just with taking a credit card in the credit card machine. I mean, but do you use a CPA that only does dentistry, or do you use a CPA where you're the only dentist?
Yes. I use a CPA that I'm the only dentist, maybe, but this is my own personal belief. I don't want to be lumped into, because I think it can become very cookie cutter if you're with someone who does that all day, every day with the same niche industry. So I like to bring different thinking from different industries into dentistry. So I've had some dental CPAs, and it didn't really work out so well for me.
So how long you been married?
9 years.
And how long were you with your partner before you guys broke up?
10 years.
Yeah, I agree with you that, I learned so many positive things from my dad on what to do. I watched him go from delivering rainbow bread for 10 years, making $11,000 a year. And me and my 5 sisters were so poor. We were so damn poor, we didn't know we were poor. I didn't know. Really, we had no idea we were poor. We didn't know we were poor until Dad quit his job, bought a Sonic drive-in franchise, and went from making $11,000 to $60,000. We moved out to the suburbs. And I remember me and my sisters just walking around the neighborhood where all these new houses were. We're just like, are you kidding me? We didn't even know this.
Here?
We didn't even know that part of Wichita existed. But the thing I learned the most from he was great with so many things, but where did all his problems come from? His partners. And my mom, I heard 1,000 lectures from my mom. I wish he had one restaurant where he owned it all. Why do you have to have 9 restaurants with 3 other guys? And, and it was always a partnership. And so what I learned the most from my dad is I don't want a partner. Marriages fail. And my God, you have sex and children, and that still doesn't work out half the time. So now you got a partner that you don't screw. You have no kids to glue you together, and that's going to work out. And everybody, and all the noise about how great partnerships are is because everybody talking about it sells it. They sell the contracts. They sell it. So they're always out there saying, come to Disneyland, come to Orlando, and get a partner, and we do partnerships. They don't advertise. Dude, if you want to marry another dentist, you need to see a shrink. Rule number 1, don't marry a dentist. A non-platonic. Not 2 dentists getting married in school, but two male dentists. God, just little things. What if you want to go into CAD CAM and cosmetic dentistry, and he wants to go into implant? They can't agree on anything.
Well, I have to say that I do have another partner, but he's not an equal partner, but I do have one, and it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, kind of the equity position. And he and I, before I did that again, he and I are super aligned with our objectives. And there's some other things that make it work. But so I agree with you that some partnerships are doomed for failure. I disagree that all partnerships are bad. Yeah,
just like marriage.
Correct.
Half of them are a nightmare, shipwreck, and half of them are a dreamboat luxury cruise.
Yep. Yeah. Half of them are better because of each other, right? And half of them are worse because of each other.
Yeah. And women, you should only marry a woman who picks you because they seem to pick better mates than men. Men always get the best looking woman at the Waffle House, And men always sit there and say, "Does this guy have a job? Does he get along with his mom?" You know, is he, they're interviewing you like an MBA student would interview you. Men are like, "Could you spin around? Could you just take one more spin in those Jordache jeans? I just want to look one more time and kick the tires." Yeah, I mean it's great. Well, look at your dental classmates. 30% of the women married a dentist in their class, and 30% of the men married someone who worked at Walmart or the Waffle House.
Yeah, I mean,
You don't want to
I
touch
got
that with a
nothing on
10-foot pole.
that.
He says, Howard, you're an idiot, and I'm not even gonna
No, I'm
acknowledge that
like,
you
I
just
got
said
nothing to add on that. I'm not saying I've got that figured out either.
that. So when you say you have a partnership, it sounds like you have an org chart where you own more stock than the other, so you have an org chart, and that's what it comes down to. And they talk about the dentist's spouse works in the office. Well, that's half the time a nightmare, and half the time the best thing ever. If there's an org chart, I mean, you go into the Catholic Church, they have a pope, a cardinal, a bishop, a priest, a monsignor, an altar. Everybody knows their place. You go into the military. He's the general, colonel, I'm infantry. That's why I'm cleaning the toilet with my toothbrush. Everyone gets it. But if they go into a dental office and the dentist says red, and then the dentist spouse up front says, no, it's blue, or they go into a partnership and you say we're going to go into this and the other one, if there's no org chart, it just crumbles down. There has to be an org chart.
Yep, I completely agree. And you need to familiarize yourself with things like drag along rights. Like I have certain rights that are inherent to me being the founding partner. But the cool part is the guy who bought in. He's amazing, and he knew he bought into my vision just as much as the company.
I like the way that you're humble and hungry, and I mean, most people that get embezzled from would never even let anybody know. I mean, they just keep that secret in the closet. What do you think gives you the self-esteem enough to say, "Yeah, I got embezzled from"? I mean, I don't walk on water, and I'll admit it.
I mean, I think I've just learned. I mean, I'm 41 years old. I think I've just learned that you gotta, that ego's not that cool. I mean, there's times when confidence and ego are cool, but other times where it's life. You got to be authentic and transparent. Otherwise, it's all just for show. And so I don't know what gives me that. Maybe it is. I don't know, but I think too that the more that people talk about something, the more that other people will feel comfortable talking about something.
So your dental office is in Atlanta, and the other one is 2 hours away. Where's the third one?
No. So there's 3 under one brand. So one's in Alpharetta, one's in Buckhead, and one's in kind of Midtown area under the brand Atlanta Dental Spa. There's another one outside of my brand. It's not associated with my brand at all. It's a complete different entity about 2 hours away.
So you have 3 in all those cities you named. Those are all suburbs of Atlanta, right?
They're all within 10 miles of 15 miles of each other.
And where did they film The Deliverance? That's what I remember.
Anywhere. That's probably,
the Macon County line.
Isn't that the dun 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 dun?
No, I forgot. You're too young. You probably don't remember that movie. When I was a kid, the scariest movie that ever came out was The Birds and The Deliverance. And The Deliverance was filmed down in Georgia. And at the time, it was the scariest movie. Did you ever see it? Oh my God! So then
I'm not a huge horror fan. I don't like horror movies.
But what's funny is I was telling my boys that The Birds with Alfred Hitchcock, was the scariest movie of all time. I didn't realize that they grew up on all this high-tech computer stuff, and I remember I was so excited to show them The Birds, and they're like 10 minutes into it, like, do we have to watch this? And I'm looking at this little black and white movie, but The Deliverance, just that last scene when he goes down with his hand in the water, we were all just But
that was in Georgia. Huh?
Yeah, that was in Georgia.
It was probably nowhere near Atlanta, but
movie, it was I think they kept saying it was the Macon County line, the Macon-Dixon County line. But anyway, so you have the Atlanta Dental Spa. What are the 3 deals? Buckhead,
Alpharetta, which is basically north of Buckhead. Alpharetta.
So I imagine Buckhead is a deer. What's Alpharetta? A flower plant?
Alpharetta. I have no idea.
So what's the third one?
and then Virginia Highlands.
So now do you have like a headquarter team of like 5 people in like HR, marketing, finance? How do you logistically run 3 offices? Do you do clinical in all 3?
I do. I do. But yeah, so I spend my time, and that's where we're going back to quality of life thing. You know, I work a week and then I take a week off. I work a week and I take a week off. So some of that, what you were just referring is like how do all the logistics work is because I have the bandwidth now to help do some of that.
Well, basically what you're doing is you're saying you spend when you don't work for a week, you're still working, you're just not doing clinical.
I'm sorry. Yeah, right. I should have prefaced that. Yes. 1 week is clinical. 1 week is admin, growth, visioneering, all that stuff.
Well, did you just see the new movie that came out about the founder? The movie The Founder about the making of McDonald's, Ray Kroc.
Yes.
Did you see that movie?
Yes. Loved it. Loved it.
You know, the thing that I never want to say because it's so truthful and it's so brutal. You know, everybody listening to you went to dental school because they want to do surgery with their hands in an operatory and fix broken teeth and toothaches and pulpotomies, and that's why we went to dental school. But the people who are the most successful haven't touched a patient in 20 years. Rick Workman owns 500 dental offices because he doesn't waste any time seeing a patient. He works, and Ray Kroc destroyed probably 100,000 family hamburger stores because they were all so busy trying to just serve their customers that no one ever thought of a drive-through, marketing, advertising. Can we make the French fries not soggy? How come every time we need 3 pickles, Mary has to walk back to the refrigerator and unscrew a jar? I mean, they didn't work on any business end, and that was why the book, The E-Myth, was so successful. That the guy was pointing out that everybody who spends all their time working on their business crushes it, and everybody who spends all their time working in the business loses it. And what you're saying is you spend half your time working on your business, and what the experts would say, you need to work all your time on your business. You can, someday droids will do, the fillings and crowns. And there's you already see evidence of experimental prototypes of machines doing things. But the bottom line is, like the CEO of Pacific Dental, that's the second biggest corporate dental chain. His dad's a dentist, but he said, I'm not going to dental school. I can hire a dentist on Craigslist in 5 minutes. So he spent all of his time, and he's got, working on his processes. So I think that's cool that you spend half your time on your business and half your time doing clinical, because this is what most of us do. I mean, we know our homies. They work 4 days a week, and on Friday, they're going to go do all that business stuff. And they wake up Friday morning just freaking fried and say, screw it, I'm going to go to the golf course and play golf and eat hot dogs and drink beer, and they never work on their business.
Right.
In fact, I would say that most dentists would be so much more successful if the most stressful time in their whole life is Mondays. If you're ever going to pick a day to work on your business, it'd be Monday morning. Because Monday morning, you're going to go in there and do it. Friday afternoon, you're not.
Which is why my office hasn't been open Mondays in 15 years.
Seriously. And why is that?
Because I noticed that there were a lot of cancellations Monday morning because patients get into the freak out mode of like, oh my gosh, I have the busiest week. What can give? I'll cancel this dental appointment. So I picked up on that because salons are always closed on Monday. So we've been closed Mondays and open Fridays for ever, 15 years.
Wow. Well, talk about I'm sorry, we went over. We're I can't believe the hour went by, but go back in time. Where was your journey going where you started this podcast that I love and a big fan? Bulletproof Dental Practice podcast. How long ago was that? And talk us through your journey about how that came
of podcasting.
Yeah. How did you end up creating a podcast? Now that I think there's now like 40 dentists on Dentaltown uploading a podcast, and the podcast section is it's just amazing. And I just get so many emails saying, I get in the car, I can't listen to talk radio, I go to the podcast, and I see the data, I see the views, the clicks, I know what they're doing. They're watching all of these podcasts.
Yep. It definitely has it's definitely grown. So my purpose, I tell people I'm not selling something why did I start a pod? My wife actually asked me that, like, why are you doing this? Like, because you didn't have enough to do, right? But I really, to me, it's two reasons, Howard. One is I was getting so much value from other people's podcasts, like Mark Costa's podcast. He's a good friend of mine, and listening to his stuff, and always wanted to kind of chime into what he was saying, right? And so, number one, I felt like I had some value to give to people, what from my own experience and my ecosystem, and a different twist on some things that I may believe with. And number two, I did it really to hold me accountable, because I talked to all these awesome people, all these awesome business leaders and dentists and stuff. And then I have to be accountable to deploy that stuff into my own world. And so it holds me accountable. But I'm not doing it with any kind of like expectation of, oh, now sign up for my consulting or whatever. And maybe there will be one day, but right now it's an altruistic thing. I want to give back and pay it forward to all the good shit that I've gotten from other people.
And I like Mark Costas too. I'm out here in Phoenix, Arizona. He's up the street in Prescott.
Prescott, yeah.
And what's he up to now? Like 7 offices?
I think he has 11 now. He just like he was on a rapid acquisition. Pretty. And what I would say it's 11 or so.
And next time you talk to him, tell him I'm going to hold his feet to the fire. What I love about what he does the most, you walk into, Southwest. The only secret to lower price is lower cost. And Herb Kelleher, again, he wasn't a pilot. I swear to God, if he would have been a pilot, he'd have gone out to all the pilot institutes and got all the pilot, the pilot spear, Panky, Dawes, Coyce. They just spent their whole life trying to get the most alphabet soup. He was a drunk lawyer who smoked 4 packs a day in Love Field. Never flown a plane in his life, but he's so geniusly simple. He's like, well, look at these guys. They're flying 6 different planes. They got to have parts for 6 different planes. They got to have training and this, and then I call in sick and you can't come in because you're certified on an Airbus and he's on a 720. And he said, we're gonna have one damn plane, and every plane's gonna be a Boeing 737. In fact, that's the only reason they still make that plane, is because it's the only one Southwest will buy, and they're 27% of seat miles flown. And Mark Costas did that with his operatory. You walk into any office he has and you open up that third drawer, it looks the same like every drawer. So if I have a dental assistant call in sick and I send in Susie Q to replace Johnny, she walks in there. He is so organized. Yep. I think he's brought Southwest Airlines to corporate dentistry unlike no other.
I would agree. He's all about systems-driven dental practice, and makes a whole lot of sense, because you don't suffer the pain when you lose that key employee or someone has to move or whatever. You can literally step someone in and their what am I trying to say? Their entry into the organization is much shorter. Yeah. Or the entry into being awesome in the organization, I should say.
And the other thing about him, that he has all the qualities of success, that they're always humble. So they listen to other people on podcasts. Yep. They listen to their employees, their patients. They're always hungry. They got a work ethic from hell. Yep. They're like 5 coyotes who have never eaten in a month. And he's so, and the third, probably maybe the biggest one, is he's so intellectually curious. And those are what I saw with the dentist that took 100 hours of dental continuity. They were curious about everything. I mean, like when people say, well, I can't decide if I should go to Panky or Coyce or Spear or Dawson. I said, well, then go to all 4 of them. Go to all 4 and then tell me which one was better and why. Because you're working on cars your whole life. Who cares if you go to a transmission course, an electrical course? Just go to all of them. You're not going to walk out of any of them dumber.
Yeah, absolutely. There's value through all of them. I completely agree with that.
Yeah, and cross-training. That's why I asked Carl Mitch, I told him once, I said, why you? There's all these guys that got in implants. Why do you think you were the best? What do you think your breakout was? And he said, because I was first a prosthodontist making removable dentures, and then these guys were doing implants so wrong that the implants were breaking, and then they'd blame it on the implant. He's like, dude, it wasn't the implant. You didn't have a bite. You didn't have
finger pointing, right?
Yeah, and he says it was the cross training in removable that made him get an A in fixed. And if you if you don't have an A in removable, how are you going to get an A in fixed? You need to know both sides. But man, I just big fan of your podcast, big fan of your website, Atlanta Dental Spa.
Well, thank you, Howard. I appreciate that. And I have to say, I don't say things like this flippantly, but you and what you've done for the industry has had a big impact on my life. I connected with a lot of people, even when I was in dental school on Dental Town, and just you providing the conduit has been probably one of the most important things in our industry. So, thank you for all that you've done. And when I see guys like you and Mark,
can you say that again to Ryan? Because he's my son here, and he thinks I'm a complete idiot. When I told him I was 4% Neanderthal, he said, "Is the other 89% orangutan?" I'm just kidding. But well, thanks for the kind words, and good luck on the show. And tell Costas and all the other podcasters to make sure all their shows are uploaded on the deal, because we're going to be doing a big cover story on it on Dental Town. And thank you for being humble, hungry, intellectually curious. And that's what I think the number one best thing about these podcasts is these little kids in small towns, their study club has one deal a month. One deal a month. They get to meet with their homies and listen to someone talk. And with the podcast, they can listen to someone 10 different people a day for free on their iPhone from around the world. I mean, it's just a game changer of making information a commodity.
And what's cool about this, and I always tell people, I'm like, it's really just yours for the taking. You can choose to consume it, but people give like their cookbook of how they did it, and it's there. And you can either use it or not, but don't complain in the meantime, right? Like, so I think that's what's super cool about people, is just being totally raw and authentic and giving back and paying it forward. And they're literally telling you how to do it if you want to do that. And so, man, it's just cool. It's just cool.
It's gonna be humans' finest century, going from a world of 80% can't read or write to a world that now everyone can access a smartphone and they have access to all the information in the world. I mean, the planet's never seen this, going all the way back to that baby tooth they found 200,000 years ago. Yeah, it's abundant. I mean, it's yours. You can make your own luck. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure, Howard. Thank you for having me.